This conference will now be recorded.
All right, folks, so you'll see here that we are going to be going over the Chapter 9 and only a portion of Chapter 9, not the full Chapter 9. I want you to be aware of that, okay? So I took information and I just condensed Chapter 9 for you all. You'll see it on the PowerPoint. Again, that's available to you on Documents and Resources, on immunity and disease. And I added some slides also to what I did here. So I created my own PowerPoint from what we already have for the chapter and just giving you specifics of what I would like you to know regarding the lymphatic system and immunity, okay? So let's turn this, get this going, starting here. All right, so, and what I would like you to think about when you're thinking about the body's immune system is that there are multiple levels of protection that the body provides for you. Okay, so you'll see here as far as the lines of defense. So you think of it as that there are these physical barriers that we'll talk in more detail, the innate immunity which we have already present within, and the ability to adapt to what we've been exposed to as far as any type of microorganisms and be able to then mount a specific response to them. But that takes a little bit more time. Okay, but so we have multiple levels of immunity. All three are really working in conjunction with each other in order to provide the immunity for our body. Okay. As far as this term antigen, right? The antigen, a foreign substance that triggers the body's immune response. So this is it's a protein. You need to remember that it's a protein, and that what goes on is that this can be viruses, bacteria. So I don't know why that's not on here, but let's get that on here because that's important. So this is just giving you a little bit as far as bacteria, viruses, any type of toxins that we could be, maybe you had gotten bit by something that released a toxin within, whether it's a spider, whether it's a snake, okay, or there some other type of creature. And also cancerous cells, right? These are our own body cells that have mutated and then rapidly divide and go out of control and cause devastation to the human body. And really what they do is they're taking nutrients and blood supply away from the cancer cells and tumors that are created by. They'll take away the nutrients that the healthy cells in our body should have, and the cancer cells will steal that from the body cells and really end up, what do you see when you see someone who is dying of cancer? Many times, they're emaciated. They're losing weight because the cancer is actually taking all the nutrition, taking all what it can as far as what's needed by the body to perform healthy, and robbing the body, the healthy cells, of that. So as far as barriers are concerned, as far as physical barriers, so really it's the skin, and it's the unbroken skin, right? Because we know that, and know this, I want you to be aware of this, that the body we have bacteria that live with us in a symbiotic relationship, meaning that they help us, we help them, they're not going to make us sick, right? In general. But if that intact skin, the skin that's not broken, if there's a cut and that bacteria that is healthy on my skin but enters deep within my body and past the epidermis and into the dermis and further layers, that can make you sick and cause an infection. You've all seen that you've gotten a cut and then it gets all red and inflamed and swollen. Yeah, that's because there's an infection, and it can be as a result of the healthy bacteria, which are okay on your skin, on the outside of the skin, but on the epidermis, on the outer layer. But if they go deep within, they can make you sick. Okay? The linings of the body cavities and such, and tubes. So know that there's mucus present. So in the oral cavity, you have mucus, you have saliva present, you have the tonsils, which are present, that are all working together to provide this barrier with the outside world enters into the oral cavity, right? Things we drink, things we eat, breathing, right? How about the sinus cavity, right? The nasal cavity, same thing as far as it has to be lined. So there's mucus present within. There's hairs that are present that can help to grab onto anything that could quite possibly make us sick that's entering into the nasal cavity there, which would eventually enter into the throat, your pharynx, and then into the respiratory system. Or how about in the case of entering into the oral cavity and through the throat, and then entering into the esophagus and the digestive system, right? I want to give you another information here. So chemical barriers. So know that there are within even within the digestive system, the stomach is very acidic for a reason. It's acidic in that it can actually be detrimental to many microorganisms, the acidity of the stomach, in addition to helping beginning the process of protein digestion. But that chemical, that the acidity, that hydrochloric acid present within your stomach will really be detrimental to most microorganisms. Not all, but most. And chemical barriers also can have to do with, as far as the physical barriers are concerned. So we have your oil producing glands, your sebaceous glands, that can also have an antibacterial effect. Your skin has a little bit of an acidic type of pH, a slightly acidic, so that also is not healthy and good for most bacteria, all right, except the ones that live on our skin in this symbiotic relationship, which is very helpful. Okay? And know that also, so like for your tears can also, for your eyes there, can, you know, the moisture of the tears also has present within certain immunoglobulins, certain antibodies that can also be detrimental to your any type of microorganisms that can enter into the eye, right? So very important that the secretions, the mucus, the secretions that are present in the nasal, oral, in the eyes, how about also in the ears, as far as the cerumen, the wax within your ears, can also act as a barrier and block and prevent organisms from entering into middle and inner ear. So when we think of immunity, right, this is important to know that really it's the body's overall ability to resist and then fight any microorganism, any foreign object, any foreign microbe that can enter into the body. So not only just a recognition of something that is not self. So this is an important thing when we're thinking of the immunity of the body. We think of self and non-self. Self would be the cells that our body produces and it recognizes as self. Okay, so that's important. That's a good thing. If our body recognizes cells that are self as non-self, then that's really a situation where we end up having an autoimmune response. The body is acting against and fighting an immune response against our own healthy cells, and that's very bad and not healthy at all. But knowing that the immune system can spot, detect foreign cells that could foreign these antigens we've mentioned about in the slide before, and these proteins that are present on bacteria, viruses, and all these different microbes, fungi, right? All these things that can quite possibly make us sick. The body recognizes it non-self and then mounts a specific response. And there are different cells and chemicals produced that can also aid in that fight, that immune response. This term innate immunity. So this is something that your body, you're born with, and that you can actually also receive from your mother, as far as in the womb, as far as through the placenta, receiving her immune cells that can also help the fetus and eventually then the baby produce an immune response that can fight in different infections and such. So preset responses to infection present from birth. Okay, so very important. Carried out by the white blood cells and the blood proteins. So the blood proteins, there's something called complement, which is a type of response that can attack certain types of foreign cells and actually kind of bore a hole in the plasma membrane of these microorganisms, leading to the destruction of the microorganism. It's pretty cool stuff. And yeah, so non-specific, we'll see that the immune system has non-specific defense and also specific defense. So specifically that we can, as a result of either specifically being exposed to a flu, some type of virus, some type of bacterium, and our body develops this immune response. And then subsequent times that our body is exposed to this antigen, we can mount a more specific immune response, right? So that's a little bit different. Also, as a result of you taking a vaccine, and this can also result in a specific immune response. Here we have innate immunity. It's non-specific, okay? But this adaptive type of immunity, the specific response, is triggered by the innate, the non-specific immune response. So do you see how, like, really they work together? They work in conjunction with each other. They're not just working independent of each other. But the innate immunity, that immunity that's present within, will spark and trigger the specific immune response present within the body that will produce special types of T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes, which will produce specific types of antibodies, which will help to fight the infection. Okay. And interesting how this can change over during your lifetime, because over time, sometimes, have you ever heard that you need like a booster shot for, say, tetanus, right? Because over time, your body's immune response those cells can die off. They are long lasting, but they can die off. And so we want to give a booster shot in order to help boost the immune response too, if you're exposed to a tetanus, okay? See here. Yeah, so huge numbers of white blood cells counterattack the invasion. So that's really important and these are specific types of also B and T lymphocytes that will be tailor-made for the specific microorganism that's attacking our body, okay? So it's this non-specific and specific immunity that's very important. And it takes a while to develop. And you'll see here that as far as the ability to remember an encounter with something that makes you sick, we have these memory B and T lymphocytes. These are special types of white blood cells, okay, the lymphocytes. And I'm sure you remember hearing that word used before. So this is interesting. So you'll see here, as far as the innate immune response that is present within, it's this non-specific immune response. This takes place immediately, right? And so we have a certain amount of receptors that can respond to, right, the antigen that's initiating this immune response. Okay? Like I said, that term non-self. There's not a memory though, okay? So this is that innate immunity, but the adaptive immunity, this is your specific immune response. This creates, as a result of these encounters with these antigens, it creates specific memory cells for those encounters with whatever it may be, whatever the microorganism that we're coming in contact with may be. It'll create this memory, and it'll be able to last for many, many years. And what happens is that the first time that your immune system responds to a specific type of microorganism, what'll happen is that the first response will be kind of slow and will take some time, but subsequent responses to an encounter with the specific type of microorganism will be much faster and much stronger, okay? All right, you're seeing here, as far as cells of immunity, as far as the neutrophil, the eosinophil, the basophil, the macrophage is actually from the monocyte, that it becomes then this macrophage, which is really like an eating machine. The macrophage and the dendritic cell will take apart foreign invaders and present pieces of them onto their plasma membrane of their cells, of the macrophage, of the dendritic cell, in order to really alert and trigger the specific immune response to these pieces that are on the plasma membrane of both of these cells, in order to let the body know, hey, I'm coming in contact with this bacteria A, and so we need to mount a specific immune response to bacteria A, whatever that may be. Understood? So it's really important that these macrophage and the dendritic cells, we call them antigen presenting cells. These are these types of cells that are actually presenting pieces of that antigen, pieces of that that microorganism that could make you sick, that could make the body sick, and alerting in particular the lymphocytes, the B and T lymphocytes, how to respond and create different types of cells that will destroy the microorganism. Right. So what I would tell you is that the macrophage and the dendritic cells, they alert the specific immune response, and then they trigger a quicker immune response subsequent times that you're coming in contact with whatever microorganism that could possibly make you sick. So here we're looking at bacteria, and we're looking at here what would be, excuse me one moment here. Yeah, so white blood cells include phagocytes and cells with other roles. So neutrophils are phagocytes. Here they're surrounding bacteria. So you'll see here that this is the bacteria, like I said before. Here's this dendritic cell right here, engulfing cells of a fungus right here. Okay, pretty cool. All right, so the white blood cells, okay, these have a very important role in the immune response. Okay, so you'll have the neutrophils, which are very similar to those monocytes that become macrophages. They're phagocytic, meaning that they're involved in eating, right? Endocytosis. Phagocytosis is a form of endocytosis. It's a form of cell eating and actually taking these microorganisms that can make you sick, and they devour the microorganism. And again, like I said to you before there, that like those dendritic cells, those macrophages will help to put that on their plasma membrane and alert the specific immune response, which would be the lymphocytes, the B and the T cells, or B lymphocyte and T lymphocyte. Okay? Eosinophils, you'll see as far as present for parasites. So it's some type of very small microorganism that can try and live off of your body, right? And so we need to mount a response in order for them not to multiply and take, really create a bad parasitic infection that can make you very ill, very sick. The basophils are involved in really increasing the allergic responses, so increasing the amount of, and they'll release like histamine, which will increase your inflammatory reaction. And so you'll notice like you'll have your nose will drain, you'll have like thin sinus drainage, you'll have runny eyes, where you're tearing a lot, and bad stuff, right? So really short-term inflammatory response, not a problem. Long-term inflammatory response can really make you miserable. So this is why we take an antihistamine in order to counter a allergic response, okay? I mentioned to you this about the dendritic cells, along with the macrophages. They're alerting the immune system and activating that specific immune response, like I said to you before, which would be these B cells and these T cells. They are B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes, okay? And know that these B and T lymphocytes will, again, have a memory of their encounters with microorganisms that are non-self and can make you sick. So the lymphatic system works with, as it says here, with the cardiovascular system, with the blood and the blood cells, in order to really determine that we're being exposed to, our body is being exposed to some type of harmful antigen, and then mount a response in conjunction with the different components of those cells and different chemicals that the body has in order to take care of these antigens that are going to quite possibly make us sick. So the lymphatic system has this substance called lymph, and all lymph is, it's present in these lymphatic vessels that are present in the lymphatic system that are adjacent to the cardiovascular system. So the cardiovascular system has arteries, has capillaries, arteries, arterioles, capillaries, venules, veins, all these different blood vessels, right? Well, and they contain blood. Well, what's present within the blood? We have fluid, which is the plasma, and then we have cells, or what we call the formed elements. The cells would be red blood cells, which are erythrocytes, platelets, which are thrombocytes, and then we have the leukocytes, the white blood cells. And in particular, it's the white blood cells that are going to be working in conjunction with the lymphatic system and to create our immune response in our immune system. Okay, so this lymph, this tissue fluid, it's made up of the fluid that's exiting from capillaries and being, you could say, sucked up by the lymphatic vessels in order to then create this lymph. So it's just a watery substance that's from the plasma of the blood. Okay, and that's what's going on. As far as there's no pump directly connected to the lymphatic system. So know that the cardiovascular system, two pumps, right? The right side and the left side. And so they're going to be pumping blood to the lungs and to the rest of the body, those two sides of the heart, the right and the left side of the heart. The lymphatic system is not directly connected to the pump, but it will drain all of its fluid and its blood vessel and its lymphatic vessels, will come to the right side of the heart and drain the lymph into the right side of the heart. Okay, will be recycled and put back with the blood, and then the cycle. It's a cycle that's continually going through and helping. So this lymph will take this fluid will take through the lymphatic vessels to lymph nodes. You've heard that before. Lymph nodes you can palpate, you can feel. If you're sick, you can feel that they get a little swollen because they're actively fighting different microorganisms that are quite possibly are making you sick. Okay, so the lymphatic system will bring them to the lymph nodes. The lymph nodes have different types of white blood cells and also macrophages present to be able to look and see, like surveillance. Okay, surveillance. You have police officers that are staking out a place and they're looking to see where the bad guys are and what they're doing. Well, here in this case, the bad guys are in your blood and in your lymph, and there's different structures like the lymph nodes that have cells present that can see, hey, that's a bad guy. That's a foreign cell that can make us sick, and then we mount an immune response in the lymph nodes, and that's why they get larger and bigger. Okay, I'm going to stop for a moment here, and I'm just going to see how you all are doing. Okay, is everybody okay? I know it's a lot of information. Again, we're recording this, so that's good, and you can always ask me questions.
Great. Hey, excuse me. What exactly should the research? What should the Chapter 9 outline look like?
Yeah, so it's just a matter of taking notes for my PowerPoint. That's all, Will. And again, this is just something to help you all. Understood?
What should I do after what should I do after writing the outline?
Yeah, then you can upload it to my in coursework.
Thanks.
There should be an area in coursework where I have for what you folks were supposed to do for me, and then you can post it. And I think I gave you until like next Thursday, so you have plenty of time. You're welcome. You're welcome.
We're going to talk about the presentations too by the end of the semester later, right?
Yes, yeah. So I'll handle that next week. Okay, I will talk about that next week. I'm not going to talk about that today because I actually will have a handout for you all that I'll give you. Okay.
Thanks.
So yeah, no problem. Anybody else have any questions or any comments right now? We good?
So basically, the outline is pretty much our notes from the PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's all. I'm not trying to make it difficult for you all. I'm just trying to give you an assignment that would be beneficial and helpful that you might already be doing, but I'm just making part of it as an assignment so that you can do it. Yeah. Okay? Very good. Question?
Yes. The question that I have is what you showed us yesterday not yesterday, I'm sorry, on Tuesday on the screen. What was that? Because now I'm a little bit confused.
What was what?
What you put on the screen on Tuesday.
I guess I was just putting information regarding, one thing I said was that there was no quiz this week. And then I mentioned about doing a summary of chapters and such. Yeah, that's all I put. Right, in coursework? Yeah, so I'd have to, at the end of class, once I'm done recording, I can go back to that. I can address that, okay? I have to look up a document and I can go over that.
Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Very good. All right, so I'm going to hide everyone and finish up our chapter here. Let me share my screen with you all and just see where we're at as far as. Okay. Yeah, so again, talking about the lymphatic system. So let's move on. And so here we have And I mentioned to you, so you see right up at the very top here, tonsils, right? So I mentioned to you this as far as the tonsils really create a ring of tissue, of this lymphatic tissue, that will help to look and serve as the surveillance, and also grab onto anything that could quite possibly make you sick that's entering into your oral cavity and entering into the throat. And it can respond to it by grabbing onto substances. And actually, have you ever seen in your throat where you could see like little on your tonsils themselves, like a little white type of a thing on there, right? Something we call them tonsil rocks. So that's as a result of your body mounting an immune response to something that the tonsils were coming in contact with that could quite possibly make you sick. That's what goes on there. So we also have present the thymus gland, we have the spleen, and we have also present all lymph nodes and these lymph vessels and such. You're not seeing all of them there, but just showing you where many of them are located there, okay? I know that, why is it putting here that we have also bone marrow? Well, again, too, if bone marrow is involved in production of blood cells, this is very important to have the bone marrow present as far as part of our immune response. If the bone marrow is not producing enough different types of blood cells, this is a problem, right? So this can be a major issue for sure. Know that our lymph nodes, okay, so little knots of tissue here, those filter lymph. And know that the spleen is really a reservoir for blood. So it filters blood. So it's a part of the lymphatic system. And what will happen is that as blood is pooling in the spleen, there are also cells present of the immune system that will look for anything that could quite possibly make you sick. Okay, so this is our lymphatic system representation. The thymus gland is really very important as far as its ability to train and help to mature T lymphocytes that will become further types of, they'll differentiate into specific types of T cells, T lymphocytes, type of white blood cell that will be involved in your immune response. In addition to, will develop memory cells that will, again, have a memory to your encounter with the pathogenic organism, microorganism. So here we have an example of a lymph node. And this is pretty cool in that you're seeing that we have these vessels, these lymphatic vessels are coming to the lymph node. So they're bringing lymph, and in that lymph can carry within it possibly these microorganisms that could make you sick. And so present within the tissues of the lymph, right, lymph nodes here, we have different types of cells that are present that can look for the microorganisms, the antigens that could make you sick, and mount an immune response. And how we slow down the flow of lymph through the vessel, through this lymph node, we have fewer lymph nodes exiting than we have entering. So here we're bringing lymph in, and here lymph is exiting. Okay, so it's passing through, it's kind of like percolating through very slowly, and being able to, your body's immune system can see if there's anything bad present within the lymph and mount a response. Yes, and you know, so the spleen, yes, so the spleen is a reservoir, and the spleen helps to also recycle old erythrocytes, old red blood cells. So yeah, your body, the rest of your body can take over for that job. But it is an important, the spleen is an important organ to have. If you need to have it removed, say it becomes diseased, or there's issues with it having Epstein-Barr virus, which is mononucleosis. If you have a bad case of that, your spleen can become enlarged and such, and so sometimes they might have to remove it because they're concerned about if that were to burst, having a lot of blood loss. I mean, there's just issues can arise, and so yes, you can live without your spleen, but it's important, just like with the appendix, to have all your organs present as long as possible. But yeah, you can live without it because other parts of the body can take over for the job that the spleen does.
Basically, if you lose it, then other things are going to have to work harder.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, indeed. Yes, yes. So, know that like your liver will be involved in this, okay, as well as your immune system be involved in doing what it can in order to, because the liver is also important as far as filtration that takes place and also detoxification. Okay.
Thank you.
So functions in so lymphatic vascular system, drainage, delivery, disposal. So this is important to see how, you know, it will have these channels, these vessels that will carry this lymph to all parts of the body and to these lymph nodes, and so that the immune system can respond or not respond to antigens that are present, foreign material, cellular debris. So cellular debris would be as a result of really recycling of old cells present within the human body. Okay. Also, this is another thing too that it's part of its role, picking up fat absorbed from the small intestine and delivering it to the bloodstream. Know that, you know, like we need fat. Okay, so fat is not something that, lipids are not something that we don't need, because really all of your cells in your body, the plasma membrane, the cell membrane that covers each of the cells, it's made up of a fat. So, you know, it'd be foolish to say, you know, you need no fat in your diet and fats are bad for you totally, because they're not. But it's a matter of too much of anything, that's when there's issues and problems. So here again, we're just looking at an image of the lymphatic system as well as the lymph node. So this is, I mentioned this to you before. So lymph nodes will filter lymph, spleen filters the blood. And again, too, they're both looking for, they both have contained within chambers and allowing for like a slow kind of movement through them in order to look for anything that could make you possibly sick. Okay. I mentioned to you that also, and so there's white blood cells present within the nodes and such, and so that we're looking for, hey, there's a microorganism that's non-self. Let's see what's going on, and then alert our immune system to respond as such. The thymus gland. So this is, again, like I said to you, they're very important for the maturing of these T cells, right? And hence they're called a T lymphocyte because of where they mature in the thymus gland. T, thymus gland, T cells. So T lymphocytes. B lymphocytes, I said to you that, I gave you that term earlier there. Those are types of lymphocytes that mature in the bone marrow and will produce antibodies. Okay, you've all heard that term, antibodies. We're going to look at that in a few minutes. Okay. So here we go, as far as looking at these bacteria, right? So the bacteria, these are these little rod-shaped green cells here, okay? And you'll see how the body is sending out different chemicals that are being released. You'll see here this histamine, it's initiating the immune response. Really, inflammation, like I said to you before, inflammation is not a bad thing short term. Long-term inflammation can be detrimental and be a problem. So patients who have issues with autoimmune diseases, they have chronic inflammation, and this is not a healthy thing at all. Okay, the immune system is really meant to be kind of like activated and ramped up very quickly, and then really pushed down and really slowing down the process of an immune response as the infection is taken care of, so that we don't start attacking our own healthy cells in addition to anything that's left over as far as that could make us sick, pathogenic foreign microorganisms. Okay, so we have different types of T cells, specific types of T lymphocytes that will actually help to suppress the immune system once it's done its job. So we don't always have an immune system that's constantly ramped up and just really, yes, we have an immune system that is alert to what's going on around us, but not always actively fighting all kinds of, no, only when there's a situation where the immune system has been really triggered to respond, will it respond, unless it's an autoimmune disease and the body starts attacking its own tissues, which is very bad. Yeah. Here you're just seeing as far as the different types of B and T lymphocytes, okay? And so what can happen as a result, we'll call them the cell-mediated immune response and the antibody-mediated immune response. Antibodies, I have to tell you folks, all they're involved in is really latching onto a cell and really immobilizing it, trying to deactivate it, and then marking it for destruction. And what I mean by destruction would be that other cells like macrophages and neutrophils that will come over and start to munch on it, start to devour and destroy and take care of that microorganism. The cell-mediated immune response, so there are, and both, B and T lymphocytes both also produce a memory. So they produce memory B cells and memory T cells. The T cells also, like I said to you, there are suppressor type of T cells that will really suppress the immune response once the infection has been taken care of, right? So that the immune response doesn't continue on into a bad way. And they'll also produce cells that are called helper T cells. And so when we talk about HIV, right, we're talking about a virus that will specifically attack the helper T cells, which really help to initiate and activate the specific immune response. And so that can be a very bad thing. If that happens, it really decimates your ability to actively respond to microorganisms. Yes, so the innate immunity can respond, but your specific immune response is really pretty much decimated, and it's not a good thing. So vaccinations. So vaccinations, we see here that we can receive an injection, okay? Or it could be something like a pill or a lollipop or something where this vaccine is placed and it enters into the human body, and it contains either a dead microorganism that your body can mount an immune response to, or a very diminished in potency. So it's not as potent. It's really taken from, not extremely weakened is the word we're using here. So either killed or extremely weakened, that your body will still mount an immune response and then help you to gain immunity too, whether it's chickenpox or German measles or something along those lines. Okay. And again, here you're seeing the booster shot. The booster shot helps to create more of those B and T lymphocytes and create memory to allow for a longer lasting immune response to whatever it is that you're being vaccinated for. Okay. I really like this image. This is really quite a good image because it helps you to see that how your body's specific immune response does what it does. So whether it's, we would say, an active immunity or passive immunity, in active immunity, you come in contact with a virus. So naturally, you come in contact with some type of flu virus at your work, at your job, from one of your kids going to school, whatever it may be. You come in contact with this and you get an infection, okay? That's your active immune response. Artificial active immunity would be that, and then, so what happens then is that as a result of that infection, your body creates an immune response, and it will create a memory of that encounter with whatever that is, that bacterium that made you sick. As far as an artificial active immunity, your body is also going to mount a response. So that's why we would say it's active, but because it's artificially given to you, you didn't just go out in the public and get this virus, you actually had it injected into you via the vaccine, right? And so this contains those weakened or dead cells from the virus, from the bacterium. And so your body will mount an active immune response. And so you'll have a memory, you'll create those B cells and those T cells and those antibodies. That's good. Okay? Now, passive immunity. Passive immunity, your body is really not doing anything other than just receiving immune cells. Now, whether it's receiving it naturally from mom, so via the breast milk, or via the placenta when the child is developing, the fetus is developing, okay? That would be a natural passive. You're just receiving. Your body is just receiving these immune cells. Or in the case of, so these antibodies, so this is a blood product, folks, which you would receive if you had gotten bitten by a snake, or how about a bat that had rabies. This is something that has been produced, a blood product that has been produced with already produced antibodies to right away mount an immune response so that you don't die. Okay, so rabies can kill you, absolutely. So we had an exposure, my kids did, to a rabid bat. We didn't know if they had gotten bit or not. So the three of them had to get, in addition to a vaccine, a rabies vaccine, they also received these antibodies, this serum that was a blood product, so that they could have these antibodies flowing within them right away to attack any type of the rabies there, so that they would not get sick and die. It's that serious indeed. So yeah, so you see here how whether we're getting it naturally or we're getting artificially, your immune system can, receive these types of products and really help us. And so this is why we also recommend, if a mom can breastfeed, very important. It really does help the child to develop a very strong immune system right from the bat, because they're receiving mom's antibodies. Allergies. So allergies, in the case of allergies, these are substances that don't make everyone sick, but can trigger an immune response in certain people because of how what's gone on in their lives, as far as whether it's genetically predisposed or as a result of, say, how about someone who was bitten by or stung by some bees, and they were done, this is repeatedly done, and they had a bad attack of many of them, and now after those subsequent attacks, they can die as a result of not having some type of EpiPen, some type of adrenaline that's given to them in order for them to very quickly fight the venom that's been injected into their bodies. Very important. So that would be like an anaphylactic shock, where it would be a full body response to an allergen that could cause your throat to close up and for the patient to die. So it's really that type of anaphylactic type response is a very dangerous response. Well, it's a life-threatening response, let's put it that way. IgE, this is a certain type of antibody that's produced as a result of allergens. So pollen, different types of food, drugs, dust mites, venom, cosmetic, I mean, just the list can go on, right, folks? That there are many allergens. And so your body will produce a specific type of antibody, okay, in order to fight the allergen and really help your body not to go into an anaphylactic shock in order to, and could quite possibly be a life-threatening response, okay? Here. Yeah, so as far as food allergies, so wheat is a big deal. So gluten, right? That's a big problem and an issue. And I know in my own family, my wife has issues with that, and it's a challenge, that's for sure. Eggs, shellfish, peanuts. We should put peanuts on there. That's a very common one also, and can be very life-threatening. So that anaphylactic shock, this is a severe type of allergic reaction that needs some type of very quick response in order for the patient to not have a very bad outcome.
When somebody gets hives, is that because of the skin or is that something else? Because
So
like
it's also,
my sister, like when she gets bit by a mosquito, wherever that part of, like wherever she got bit will just blow up, and like that whole section will just blow up into like a hive.
yeah, so that really can be more. So she's having more of a severe type of reaction than most people. So is she more susceptible to some type of allergic response to as a result of the bite and such? Yeah, I would say that for sure, in comparison to most people, because not everybody does that, right? So it's a matter of that her body, for whatever reason, is more sensitive to that. Indeed. Yeah. So it's a more exaggerated response than, say, some like you or I that had the same type of mosquito bite us. It wouldn't be so bad, per se. Okay? Now, interesting here as far as, and thank you for the input. Thank you for the question. Antibodies, right? So these are substances produced by these B lymphocytes that will actually, like I said, mark something for destruction. So mark some type of pathogenic microorganism that contain these antigens, right? That contain these antigens that trigger an immune response. Well, the antibodies mark these cells for destruction, so they attach to them. They attach to the plasma membrane. They allow for these bad cells to clump together as a result of these antibodies, so they kind of inactivate them, and then also mark them for destruction by the macrophages that will come along and eat them and take care of them. Okay? The term immunodeficiency, well, you know what the term, if something is deficient, they're lacking, right? So lacking of properly functioning lymphocytes. And in the case, like I said, of HIV, we talked about, it's these T cells, these particular helper T cells that are actually overtaken by the virus, right? Because virus really, they're very tiny particles that could make you sick. That's what a virus is, extremely tiny. So if a bacterium is tiny, know that bacterium can be inhabited by viruses, right? They can be taken over by a virus. So viruses are very, very tiny particles that can make you sick, and they don't really have the organelles that a cell has. So they'll take over other cells in order to reproduce their own viruses. Okay, so they really do, they hijack cells. That's what a virus does. The virus is a particulate, dangerous microorganism. Yeah, it's not even really considered alive per se, but it's able to take over a cell and then have that cell reproduce more of its own viral cell. Yeah, it's crazy stuff. Viruses are something. Look at this here as far as these antibodies are concerned. So we have IgA, IgD, IgE, IgG, and IgM. And so you'll see here the Ig stands for immunoglobulin. So these are types of proteins that are present within the blood. Now, these specific types of proteins, the antibodies, are B lymphocytes that will produce a certain type of a cell called a plasma cell that will in turn be like a factory to produce these antibodies. And in particular, what goes on is that these IgMs are produced first, but then really the IgG, these types of antibodies are produced throughout the body, and these are really the strongest attack that'll take place in more numbers than all the other ones. But again, these other antibodies are produced in response to specific types of issues. Okay. Now the IgA, recall I said about the saliva, about the tears and also saliva, right? These secretions that we produce. Well, how about also breast milk? This will also produce these types of antibodies that are present within these. So in order to help, so in case of the saliva and tears, if there's any microorganisms in these areas. As far as the IgD, it's part of the B cell receptor. So what goes on is that it's a part of these B lymphocytes that will actually, it's going to help to activate specific types of immune cells. Leave it at that. IgE you saw before as far as for parasites, right? So parasites with these specific types of antibodies will attack the parasites. The IgG, I said, this is the most common type of immunoglobulin present or antibody present, secreted by the plasma cells, these special types of B cells, and they can cross the placenta into the fetus. So these can also, as far as the placenta is concerned, so for the fetus, it'll receive antibodies by the placenta as well as from the breast milk. Okay? And then we have here, as far as the early stages of immunity, would be these IgMs that are produced. Now, these are a couple of terms that you've heard of. Now, we all are familiar with. You might not have been familiar with this term before, but now you are, as far as the pandemic going on with what's going on with the coronavirus, COVID-19, right? And then the different types of mutations that are taking place here. So an epidemic breaks out at different places around the world at the same time. So that's why we call it a pandemic. An epidemic, disease rate increases to a level above what experience would predict. And so what happens is that it's a type of a disease that's starting to go out of control in an area, epidemic, but pandemic throughout the world. Okay? And this, I took this offline here and just kind of giving you an idea as far as the epidemic and pandemic, because you've heard both of those terms. And again, the pandemic, think it's globally, okay, affecting the whole country, the whole world. Okay, epidemic describes a problem that grows out of control. When talking about medicine, is occurrence of an illness actively spreading in a community at a particular time. So there can be an epidemic in certain areas of the country, right? So there can be an issue with mumps, with measles, with chickenpox. There can be epidemics. A pandemic, like you said, we're seeing this really affecting more of a worldwide situation. So much more severe than just an epidemic.
Professor, what I learned about the Spanish